What was a myth in ancient Greece? The ancient Greeks, in their archaic phase, called mythos what we call myth today. For them, a mythos was a true story, a story that reveals the origin of the world and human beings. The term myth had a different meaning in ancient Greece, representing narratives considered true and explanatory about the origin of the world and human beings. Currently, with the development of philosophy and modern science and theological understanding, myth or mythos are often associated with a false belief. Plato, despite living in a period of transition to a more rational and philosophical vision, used mythos in his works. He adapted and created new ones with the aim of transmitting complex philosophical concepts in a more accessible way to the general public. From this, it can be seen that mythos or ancient myths served as pedagogical tools, allowing Plato to teach philosophical ideas in a more engaging and memorable way. Furthermore, myths also had the function of reinforcing the beliefs and values that Plato considered important. Cosmology and philosophy were not necessarily opposed, but rather complementary. Myths could serve as sources between philosophy and the general public, making philosophical ideas more understandable and attractive. Plato's use of myths was not arbitrary but rather strategic.
The cosmology of Timaeus is a complex and broad construction involving a divine creator and the ideal model. However, it is presented in the form of a myth, that is, a narrative that does not seek scientific precision, but rather the understanding of the cosmic order. The interpretation of eikos mythos. The different translation and interpretation of the expression eikos mytho, which can be translated as a probable tale, probable history, or appropriate tale. The different interpretations reflect different approaches to understanding Platonic cosmology. The cosmology of Timaeus is always in the processes of becoming and cannot be fully known. Timaeus addresses the issue of rationality present in Platonic cosmology. Some authors argue that cosmology reveals the rationality of the cosmos, while others emphasize the unverifiable nature of this cosmology. The cosmology of Timaeus demonstrates how the interpretation of this myth has been the subject of debate and analysis by several scholars throughout history.
The legend of Atlantis is one of the most fascinating and fascinating stories of antiquity. The idea of this lost continent with an advanced civilization has its origins in Plato's dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, written around 360 BC. According to Plato, Atlantis was a powerful and prosperous civilization located beyond the Pillars of Hercules. He described the island as larger than Libya and Asia Minor combined, with an advanced society in terms of technology, architectures, and governance. However, this prosperity did not last. Plato says that they became morally corrupt, which led to the wrath of the gods, and as punishment Atlantis was submerged under the sea.
Intention between myths and logos. Plato recognizes that myths in general are false or at most have some truth. However, he also states that myths can be useful for transmitting philosophical truths. This tension between the search for truth and the use of fictional narrative is a striking feature of Platonic philosophy. Plato criticizes the excessive use of images in myths, arguing that they can obscure the understanding of truth. He argues that philosophical knowledge should be based on reason and not on imagination. In Republic, Plato uses allegory of the cave as an example of how myth can be used to transmit philosophical ideas. The allegory, while being a narrative, functions as a metaphor for the philosophical journey. Plato's use of myth shows us the importance of narrative in the construction of knowledge. Even in philosophy, narratives can be powerful tools for transmitting complex ideas. The attention paid to myth and logos in Plato raises questions about the relationship between reason and emotion in the process of knowledge. Emotion can be an obstacle to reason, but it can also be in the search for truth.
The cosmology described in the dialogue. By exploring the creation of the cosmos and the nature of reality, Plato offers a complex vision of reality by rationalizing the relationship between the sensible world and the intelligible world. Plato establishes a clear distinction between the sensible world, imperfect and constantly changing, and the intelligible world, perfect and eternal. This duality influenced Plato's understanding of the nature of knowledge and the search for truth. The figure of the demiurge as cosmic architect raises questions about the nature creation and the existence of an ordering principle of the universe. The discussion about freedom and necessity in creation of the world becomes central to Platonic philosophy. The nature of time, Plato presents a cyclical conception of time, linked to the idea of a universal soul, which orders the celestial and world movements. This vision of time influences the understanding of the change of eternity. Mathematics is fundamental in Platonic cosmology, since it is through mathematics that the demiurge organizes matter and gives shape to the cosmos. This valorization of the mathematics as the language of nature began to have profound implications for the philosophy of science. The presence and origin of evil is a philosophical problem that Plato addresses in the Timaeus. He seeks to explain the origin of evil without compromising the goodness of the demiurge.
Comparing Platonic and Aristotelian cosmology. Plato and Aristotle present distinct views on the nature of the universe, which are reflected in the cosmologies. Although both were influential in the history of thought, their cosmologies diverge on crucial points. Platonic cosmology is deeply marked by the theory of forms or ideas. For Plato, the sensible world, the world we perceive through our senses, is only an imperfect shadow of an ideal and eternal world, inhabited by the perfect forms of all things. The demiurge is the figure responsible for the creation of the sensible world, modeling it from the perfect forms. He is a divine craftsman who seeks to limit the world of ideas in the best possible way. Mathematics plays a central role in Platonic cosmology, as forms are conceived as perfect mathematical entities. The order of the universe is seen as an expression of mathematical harmony. Aristotelian cosmology rejects Platonic theory of forms and proposes a more realistic vision of reality. For him, individual things are substance composed of matter and form. Form is what defines the essence of a thing, while matter is the substrate that receives the form. Instead of the demiurge, Aristotle proposes the existence of an unmoved, a first mover that moves all things without being moved by anything. This unmoved mover is the final cause of all movement in the universe. Aristotle establishes a hierarchy of beings, with God Ai the top, followed by angels, humans and animals. This hierarchy reflects the natural order of the universe. The main differences. The nature of reality. Plato postulates the existence of an ideal world separate from the sensible world, while Aristotle defends the unity of reality. The Platonic demiurge is a divine craftsman, while the Aristotelian unmoved mover is a final cause. Although both cosmologies value mathematics, Plato places it in a more central role, associated with perfect forms. Now a little ancient history before Plato and Aristotle, that is, comparing Platonic cosmology with Babylonian and Egyptian cosmologies. Attribute the creation of the universe to one or more deities. The idea of higher being responsible for cosmic order is a common element in thesis cosmologies. In some versions, both Platonic and Egyptian cosmologies suggest a cosmic cycle of creation and destruction, with periods of renewal and rebirth. Celestial bodies such as the sun, moon and stars play a fundamental role in the cosmology of all these cultures, and are often associated with deities and divine influence. Ancient cosmologies including Platonic tend to establish a connection between cosmic order and social order. The structure of the universe is seen as a reflection of the organization of human society. Platonic cosmology introduces a duality that is not so evident in Babylonian and Egyptian cosmologies, although both accept the concept of darkness and light. Platonic cosmology emphasizes the role of reason in understanding the universe, seeking logical and rational explanations for natural phenomena. In turn, Babylonian and Egyptian cosmologists tend to more mythical and based on sacred narratives. In Plato, the purpose of the universe is a realization of good, and for good Babylonian and Egyptian cosmologies tend to have a more cyclical and less theological view. The conception of time also varies between the different cosmologies. Platonic presents a cyclical times, but with a linear dimension associated with the creation and decay of the universe. Babylonian and Egyptian cosmologies tend to conceive time more cyclical and less linearly.